Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, episode 162.
So being able to effectively communicate between those different teams is a huge skill to have, because what you communicate to sales isn't necessarily the same way you're going to communicate to your engineering organization, for example. So you got to be able to kind of turn that switch on and off at the right times, and know that whatever it is that you're communicating is effectively conveyed for your audience. That's a big one.
Wireless LAN Professionals is a place to educate, inform, encourage, and entertain those involved in wireless LANs. This Wireless LAN Professionals podcast is an audio manifestation of these goals. Our host is a wireless LAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher, Keith Parsons. And now, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals.
WLAN Pro's Notebook, one of the features we added in here on one of the laminated cards, is probably the one I use most. It's the 807AC VHT MCS SNR and RSSI chart. In the past, we put out some charts that showed N versus AC. We chose on this time around just to include only the AC version, and from it, you can kind of figure out just about everything else you need to look at. I use this all the time to figure out what's the, I might see that I'm at a certain data rate, but I don't know what the MCS is. And from the MCS, what I'm really looking for is what's the modulation. And it's great to show customers. You can say, well, we connected here, and then what happens if we back down there? In addition to just the data rate for guard interval, short guard, and long guard interval, we've added a couple columns, minimum SNR and RSSI, and these come from Andrew Vanaj's Revolution Wi-Fi Capacity Planner. One of the pages in there, he pulled up the data to show what are the details you need for each of these, both in SNR and RSSI. And it's just a useful thing to go and look up and say you're designing and you want to design around, well, if you wanted to, you could design around 256 QAM, showing you need to really have 35 to 40 SNR to maintain that. That's quite a bit of SNR and really loud in the low 50s. And, if you design around the low 50s, you're going to have massive co-channel interference and thus not get the capacity you're after. So this is a useful chart to show the customers when they ask for things that you can explain to them and say, well, this is what we would need to get. And if we get that, then something else follows. So I use this chart probably at least on a daily basis to look at things. I've got it on all my computers, and it's here on the notebook that you can just flip to it and show customers. All of the different laminated cards that we've put in here are here for a reason. They're here to let you have a resource at your fingertips that has the things that you might want to use. So thanks for using the WLAN Pro's Notebook. We'll continue to show other laminated cards and information. Again, if you have anything you'd like to add to future notebooks, what kind of resources you use, we'd be glad to look at yours and see if we can add them in the future.
Let's get to know our colleagues and friends with a shared passion for Wi-Fi. It's time to search Who Is.
Well, Devin, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So introduce yourself. Let the community know a little bit about you, the kind of where you come from in the Wi-Fi world and what you're up to these days.
Certainly. So my name is Devin Barger. I'm part of the MR product management team over at Cisco Meraki. So dealing with everything that is related to the world of Wi-Fi when it comes to Meraki in general.
Okay. Got
started at Meraki actually back in 2014. Came on board as a network support engineer, which really, I got involved with Wi-Fi in a bit of my college curriculum. Went to East Carolina University and got familiar with what was all the rage at the time was 802.11n. And got introduced to not only 802.11 but also the new brave exciting world of LTE at the time as well, and that really kind of piqued up my interest in terms of Wi-Fi, cellular technologies, just general RF physics. So I got the opportunity to come on board with Meraki fresh out of college, and that really introduced me to more of an in-depth technical purview of how wireless technologies work out in the real world, and enterprise networks, and really getting to dig in and look at spectrum analyses, site surveys with customers. I really get that deep level of understanding of how 802.11 operates. How RF characteristics are going to change from environment to environment, and then using that knowledge to really try and get the most efficient, best operating wireless network possible. So I did a lot of that, and I did supporting wireless networks for about a year or so, and then I ventured out and decided, instead of supporting wireless networks, I want to be the one designing and implementing wireless networks.
Very cool.
So I left and I joined a partner, Adventel Networks, out here in the Bay Area, down in San Jose, and we were a Aruba partner, Ruckus partner as well. And so
Okay.
I got to do a lot of cool implementations with a variety of vendors, and that really, kind of opens the door and shows you, there's a lot of people, a lot of professionals in the industry that will, they'll get onboarded with a particular vendor, and that's what they'll know through and through. But once you venture out and start seeing, different vendors, different implementations, there'll be different buzzwords and connotations applied to certain
Yeah.
features or technologies. But in the end, it's all RF and it's all 802.11 standardized, and that was really cool and a very neat experience for me to be able to branch out and start implementing just best of breed wireless networks regardless of vendor, right? So it was a very
Yeah.
fun experience there.
What was the, impetus for you to say, "Hey, I should get at" were you getting frustrated in your role? Was it just a path to earn more money? Or what was kind of your driving force, you think, at
Yeah,
that point for that decision?
yeah, great question. I mean, it was a combination of a few different factors. One was more of a personal lifestyle decision. My girlfriend at the time, my wife now, she had just started working in the South Bay as well, and we were at the time
Okay.
living in San Francisco. So wanted to find something a little bit more feasible with that Bay Area commute. It's a nightmare. So I wanted to get something a little closer to home. So we ended up relocating. At the same time, though, I was kind of at that point of I've been doing supporting wireless networks for a year, and I could just tell that there was so much more to it than looking at everything from a post sales troubleshooting perspective. I think starting out, troubleshooting and supporting wireless networks is a phenomenal first step in terms of getting really good exposure
Yeah.
into the very fine details of how everything interoperates, from clients, from access points, from the entire distributed system of a wireless network. Tremendous experience supporting it, but if anyone in the network support industry will tell you that it's not an easy job. Nobody picks up the phone and says, I'm in a great mood today. I'm going to give network support a call and
Yeah,
just
I
chat
just
them
tell
up.
them how what a great job they've been doing.
um, and believe it or not, you will get those calls occasionally where people are just thrilled with everything
Yeah,
that's going on, and they
but
just
it's
want to
not
talk.
the norm.
It is not the norm. That's for sure. So, part of it was, I picked up great experience. I was ready. I'd gotten fast tracked on my CWNP route. I'd
Okay,
gotten my NA. I was looking and at the time studying for my CWAP as well.
okay.
Um, and so that was kind of where, I'd done for a year. I've been supporting wireless networks, and I really wanted to try my hand at a fresh perspective on something that I'd grown pretty familiar with. And that was where the opportunity kind of came into play to try out the systems engineering role, do some pre deployment design,
Yeah,
RSSI
yeah.
surveying, rather than being the one saying, well, reviewing your survey, these look like areas we could improve on from coverage or capacity standpoints, and instead be the one that's actually implementing the surveys and getting that boots on the ground approach. So it's a little bit of a combination of a good opportunity from a professional standpoint, as well as just the right move at the time in terms of my personal lifestyle at that time.
So going to you, and I've been asking this question of guys is like, the younger self question. If you could go back, talk to that guy who's starting out or maybe in the throes of feeling frustrated, what encouragement might you give or tips or even just advice on how to make that the best it can be?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best word of advice is to never stop learning, right? You get started out with something, and the worst thing that could possibly happen is you get frustrated and you give up on it. I mean it's an easy thing to do. But what kept me going was just in general my curiosity, knowing that look, I know there's a lot more to wireless
Yeah.
networks than supporting Meraki Wi-Fi installs.
Yeah.
So the world of RF specifically. I mean, there's so many different avenues you could go down. Even if maybe Wi-Fi is not your cup of tea, and but you still have a general interest in RF physics. I mean, you can go as deep into the physics aspect of it as you'd ever want to go, and all of that will still come back and relate. There's a lot of people. I don't think I even got to this point, but I'm actually on the product management side at Meraki, and there's a lot of
Okay.
people on from the product management BU that actually come from more of an electrical engineering background. So
Ah, yeah.
there's a variety of different ways that you can really take your career down different avenues and have it relate back to wireless in some form or fashion. I think the important thing is just not giving up and knowing that there's always more things to learn, more things to experience.
That's good.
Wi-Fi is a super exciting technology. It's nearly ubiquitous across many corners of the globe now, and you know if there's an interest there and you develop a passion for it, really the possibilities are limitless to go down that route.
Very cool. Were you in a particular vertical, originally?
Not originally, no. So it from a support standpoint, we're kind of a catch-all.
Okay.
So everyone that calls in, we get tiered out based on customer size, of course. So your higher tier customers will get a different support queue than some lower tier customers. But a lot of times that will overlap and they'll cross reference each other. So anyone, the idea from a support perspective, and it's probably a little unique to Meraki, is being whoever you call in is going to be fully capable of answering your call, your questions, and troubleshooting wherever they need to troubleshoot. And then when I moved into the SC side of the house, working for Advantel, we were kind of spread out from that perspective as well. A few enterprise customers,
Okay.
some distributed retail, a lot of K-12, your typical run of the mill. So it wasn't really too focused in any one vertical or another. Definitely varied in size from global enterprises with worldwide deployments to a couple smaller school districts or a couple mom and pop shops that are just looking for that to get their foot in the digital age of
Yeah.
doing business essentially.
That's great. So, bring us up to speed. You, start at support, you go in this route of engineer, kind of the deployment. Now,
hmm
where are you at now?
Yeah, so now I'm working on the product management side here at Meraki, supporting the MR, the wireless portfolio.
And how did that come to be?
That came to be it's kind of a similar story to how I went from support to SC. Honestly, it's
Oh, we're
just kind
learning
of
something about your life, transition points here.
just take you down a journey of the life of Devin Barger.
Yeah. Sit back.
So yeah, it got into I did the SC role for close to 2 years, and it came to a point where it was I'd stayed in really close contact with the individuals that I'd worked with from my original time at Meraki, and a lot of them had actually moved up into more of the product management roles
Okay.
from different products, but I'd still stayed in contact with those folks and were friends, and so there's always kind of that talk of if you ever wanted to come back, we would love to have you on the wireless side supporting the MR team. And I was actually just fortunate enough to take someone up on that opportunity. My wife and I were at the point where she had actually had another opportunity come up, and just kind of following her around is really what this all comes down to.
That
She's
is not a bad move. I think that's a smart man right there.
that could be another entirely separate long conversation of wise choices to make.
Yeah.
uh,
Exactly.
so yeah, I mean the cards just kind of fell in that favor to where I was really interested in moving back up into San Francisco, and Meraki was a great place to me, and was really an excellent stepping point for my really just getting started in my career. And
Very
the
cool.
the cards lined up nicely for me to really take that further and get back with Meraki and get a little bit more feel of managing the product. So it was
Yeah.
really a chance for me to kind of come full circle on everything, and go from supporting to designing and implementing, and now managing the product that others are going to support and others are going to implement, and getting the more of the business aspect of everything goes into it.
But you
Um,
must bring a nice perspective having touched all those different pieces along the way, you kind of that innate sense of what troubles and issues the implementers are running into.
Absolutely, yeah. It brought a lot of fresh perspective on not only how Meraki operates, but how other vendors in the market operate, and some of the key technologies that a lot of customers are really excited about and focused on, and asking questions about, and bringing that type of insight to the product management side, and seeing how we can best position Meraki in terms of satisfying those needs and satisfying those use cases. So it definitely brought a lot of great insight and perspective. And so I'm actually in more of the product specialist role on the product management side, which is product specialist is pretty unique to Meraki. It's similar in some ways to technical marketing engineer roles
Okay.
at other companies, but it also varies a bit. So I do get a lot of exposure to the business side, the data analytics piece of a product management role, but I also get to stay very technical in my role,
Okay, so
helping.
walk us through kinda what's your typical week? What are the things that you're involved in this type of role?
Absolutely. So I still stay close to support, and working with support and our escalations team, and what's called our support product specialists, and making sure issues that customers are reporting are not working as expected, or are expected. So kind of helping guide the line of what are bugs, or what's expected behavior, and how to better delineate between the two, and for the issues that do come up as bugs, for example, in this case, working very closely with our engineering team in that organization, in terms of prioritizing, making sure that we get people and get eyes on issues that get reported, so that we can get them resolved and corrected in as quick of a fashion as we possibly can. But then there's also more of supporting the sales organization side of it, to where uh, opportunities come up. They're looking for really that kind of that subject matter expert to hop on a call with a customer, walk them
Okay.
through some of the finer details that are going to be more of an expert level knowledge share. Something that we have a phenomenal SE community, but sometimes it's nice to have that extra product specific voice come on, and really explain the finer details of not only how something works, but why we designed it to work in a certain manner or a certain fashion, and really give that type of product level insight, to really help instill that confidence into customers, in terms of the solution that they're buying is going to be suitable and fit for their needs. Also, one of my favorite parts of kind of the product specialist role is also working with our marketing team. So our product marketing managers, and doing evangelizing the product, traveling to different trade shows, conferences, and talking about either Meraki or wireless, and in general RF technologies,
Yeah.
and just getting the word out there, seeing people get excited gives me a lot of joy, and know that there's other people that are passionate about the same things I'm passionate about. And so being able to get out there and communicate what I enjoy, and see that other people enjoy hearing about it, is really an exciting thing for me. And sort of kind of tying into that is being able to do some of the public facing documentation that goes along with it. So
Yeah.
blog posts, white papers, things of that nature,
Kinda
working.
knowing I was part of that getting out to the world.
Right, right, exactly. It's super awesome to publish something when it's a
Yeah.
document, or release a instructional video or a white paper, and then see other people kind of retweet it on Twitter or share it
Absolutely,
on
yeah.
LinkedIn. It's a super um, invigorating thing to come across. It's a lot of fun.
That's cool. So if, there's someone who's interested in this kinda role, what do you think, what would you tell them are some of the things that they should be working on, or, what kind of people would Meraki or a similar company hire for this type of role? What skill sets do you need to have in place, you think?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, what we'd really would look for, and I imagine what a lot of similar companies in the industry would look for, would be really that expert level knowledge when it comes to, first and foremost, 802.11 protocol, the associated amendments, and the interoperation of
Okay.
how Wi-Fi really works. So really the CWNP track is a phenomenal resource, going through the NA, the AP, the DP, and the SP studies, and really getting that fine level knowledge of how everything works under the hood. Because really you can take that level of information and apply it, like we were discussing earlier. You can apply that
Yeah.
to essentially any vendor, right? It's all Wi-Fi under the hood. So the foundational, really strong, in-depth expertise that comes with being a wireless professional in the Wi-Fi industry would be first and foremost the one thing that you'd want to focus on. And like I said, CWNP is a great way to kind of get started on that and get ramped up. And then other vendors will have their own kind of certification tracks that would be more specific to them, which will definitely lead credence to, depending on the company that you're looking to get involved with and what they're using. Beyond that, really, what we want to look for is more of the soft skills, communication,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's what I was gonna ask about, yeah.
So being in a product specialist role at Meraki, for example, and really any product management organization, you're going to be wearing a lot of hats. You'll be essentially the liaison between support, between sales, engineering, marketing, any type of demand generation team or business marketing team. So being able to effectively communicate between those different teams is a huge skill to have, because what you communicate to sales isn't necessarily the same way you're going to communicate to your engineering organization, for example.
Mhm.
So you got to be able to kind of turn that switch on and off at the right times, and know that whatever it is that you're communicating is effectively conveyed for your audience. That's a big one, because we do like to get in front of customers and visit sites, and whether it be an exec level audience or people that are doing the actual design and installs, you need to be able to really be able to communicate effectively. The other thing is really just going to be critical thinking, right? So being faced with obstacles, whether it be customers are wanting to implement this, but you don't offer that. What are ways that you can still satisfy that requirement?
Mhm.
In addition to really just having overall market knowledge. So another aspect of working on some of the product management side is knowing the competition, knowing the industry and the direction things are going, and being able to convey that effectively to the engineers that are going to be the ones that are implementing that, whatever that feature or technology might be,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
ensuring that what you're building is what people want to see and what they want to use. So there's a lot of different facets to it, for sure. I think the main thing being know Wi-Fi, be able to communicate, know the industry, blog posts, different types of there's a lot of different blog roles that are out there that are super effective. The WLPC podcast, for sure.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot of great ways to stay current on Wi-Fi trends, technology trends that are related to Wi-Fi, and so being able to tie that together with the underlying foundations of 802.11
Yeah, that's good.
operations is going to be key and
So,
vital.
you talked about the CWNP program. What other certifications, or I guess in general, other ways, you've said the podcasts, learning kind of the surrounding technologies, anything
Mhm.
else speaking of certifications, where are you on the certification track?
Yeah, so on the certification track, I've got a long list of different vendor certs from when I was in my SC days. Some of them probably expired by now, I have to admit.
Yeah.
But I do. So I have my CWNA, I have my CWAP, my CWDP. I studied for the CWSP about a year ago and never got around to
Okay.
taking the exam. So that one is definitely still on my to-do list. I want to get that knocked out and go ahead and try to get the CWNE taken care of and join that elite community.
Yes.
Yeah, just that's another key aspect of being on product management is prioritization. So making
Yeah.
sure tasks that you need to get done are prioritized appropriately. So that's one I need to prioritize appropriately and get knocked out. Other than that, I got a lot of Aruba certs, working with ClearPass, ACMP, ACCP, if I recall correctly, the Ruckus Wise Guys certifications. And then I believe my Cisco sides are expired, but CCNA. never took the CCNA wireless. Most of my actual Cisco specific studies were centered around routing and switching back when I was in school, actually.
Okay.
Um, and so before I actually got involved with more of a Cisco wireless type of role, I kind of by then I was more focused on Meraki and the two vendor enough to where the two differ enough to where it really wasn't in at the top of my to-do list, top
Yeah.
of my priorities to sit down and knock out the CCNA wireless studies or anything like that. So it's I think a good point, kind of tying off of that is not going out and feeling like you have to be a cert monkey, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely beneficial if you're an SE to be certified, and a lot of companies are going to pay for you and push for you to get certified in whatever products you're going to be working with. But if you're not someone that works with directly with Meraki or works directly with Cisco or Aruba or name your company, then going through and trying to gather up materials, pay list price, or buy materials off eBay, whatever it might be. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Instead, I'd focus more on knowing, again, just knowing 802.11 and how that all
Yeah.
interoperates. And then, of course, as different conversations pop up, someone might be looking for how something is implemented for a given vendor, and that's when you can start digging into some of the vendor specific stuff. But unless you're looking to be like an SC in a role or some type of technical specialist in a role that's working for a given company, usually the certs that are vendor specific aren't as important. And I think that's kind of going back to really the CWNP studies are probably the best from a vendor agnostic approach.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Let's go back to the beginning again, because I know you're not making any mistakes now. But if there's a big mistake you made in your life that really taught you something valuable, what would that be?
Oh, big mistake that really taught me something valuable.
It doesn't have to be big, just something that you didn't go
Yeah.
quite as you thought that really, but from that you pulled something valuable.
Well, I think a common mistake that a lot of people make, and something that I know I did starting out, was not really knowing the differences between coverage-based wireless designs and capacity-focused wireless designs.
Okay.
And that really kind of got started, not to try and have me shift the blame to someone else, but back when I was really, getting first introduced to Wi-Fi in my studies, it was 11 in, and really the concept of very high density wireless network deployments wasn't really well known, right? It was still very much thought of as a coverage based deployment model, to where I
Mhm.
want to crank all my radios up to the
Yeah.
maximum conducted power, and I want to see if I can hear that signal from half a mile away. And if I can,
Good.
excellent, my job is done.
See you later.
And so you kind of you can easily fall into the trap, and certainly there are a lot of customers that would do this as well, to where enterprise Wi-Fi is not expensive, or is not cheap, I should say. It
Yeah.
can be expensive, especially when you're looking at covering a large office building or a campus, and so a lot of people, will focus more on where can I hear coverage, and if I can hear the coverage, then I'm going to be satisfied with that. They don't really take into account, one, what that coverage looks like on the mobile phone compared to my 3x3 laptop with high sensitivity radios. But I think more importantly is we're now at the point to where capacity is almost, I won't say always, but is really commonly going to be at the forefront of design needs,
Mhm.
and what customers are looking for. So getting more familiar with proper design techniques, surveying for your weakest clients, surveying to where you have audible neighbors at, maybe negative 65 dBm, but not to where you have 10 audible neighbors at negative 55 dBm. You start introducing bad roaming behavior, controlling
Yeah.
your beacon rates, your minimum bit rates that are used for your management frames and your broadcast frames, so that clients aren't latching on and then being able to decode beacons from an AP from 3 classrooms away when they're still connected to an AP, or should be connected to an AP that's probably in the classroom with them, or next door. So really, it comes down to better design practices from a capacity standpoint. Another common one we see all the time is 80 megahertz channels in a building that has 200 APs, for example. And so really understanding the difference between single client throughput and overall aggregate throughput, and the different ways that you can optimize capacity over single client performance by using 20 megahertz channel widths on 5 gig. Optimizing the network to where clients are on and off the air in as quick of a fashion as possible, and really just giving credence to designing for capacity rather than trying to get coverage
Yeah.
from all 3 floors around you with 1 or 2 access points. I think that's definitely the big takeaway, and one that until you really get involved with Wi-Fi deployments or supporting Wi-Fi deployments, that you really don't take into account, because when you're just going through and you're reading about Wi-Fi, it's logical to think that if I have coverage, if I have signal, I should be okay. And that works for, a home office, for example. But
Yeah.
as you start getting into more enterprise Wi-Fi, that methodology is really going to fall flat on its face really quickly. And that's something we see a lot. And, it's good job security for those in the support industry. Or those in trying to design wireless
Yeah.
networks properly. But it's a gotcha that certainly comes up, and will continue to come up more and more as more Wi-Fi capable devices come onto the network for sure.
Well, thank you. So, one more question. Favorite piece of equipment you're using these days?
Favorite piece of equipment? I recently bought Wi-Fi signal from the App Store.
Okay.
So I'm a MacBook user. Wi-Fi signal was made by Adrian Granados, same guy that made Wi-Fi Explorer, which is another awesome utility. But I really like Wi-Fi signal because it gives you a lot of really good
Hmm.
information beyond what the kind of the stock out of box
Yeah.
OSX icon will give you. So you can really easily take DVM and convert that to percentages. You can get real time graphs based on your SNR, based on your TX rate, your MCS index. They'll give you channel recommendations based off co-channel contention or any type of non-802.11 interference that comes up as noise. It's really awesome. They'll also give you, and I've used this when going on site to a couple customer networks, just to kind of do, you come into the lobby, you're
Yeah.
there to, better understand what the current wireless deployment is. So maybe you connect to the guest network when you first walk in, you pop open Wi-Fi signal, and it'll give you a notification when you roam. And so you can easily, as you're walking to the conference room,
That's
see
good.
what the roaming behavior is like, for example, or are you sticking to 1 AP, even though I visibly saw myself walk underneath 3 different access points, right? That's an awesome tool. I also like acrylic, which is an easy way. One way, and I probably should have mentioned this in terms of gotchas. Like another thing that comes up a lot is people that will fall for just doing a predictive design rather than using any type of on-site measurements, right? So
Hmm.
predictive analysis when it comes to doing like a site survey is very powerful. Like those algorithms are top notch. Ekahau is a partner of ours that we work closely with. They do a great job of doing predictive design heat maps. But what a lot of people don't fall into is they don't actually go on site and measure what the different attenuation variables might be from obstacles that are in the environment that maybe aren't part of the default list in Ekahau,
Mm.
or maybe they attenuate differently than what the default list in Ekahau might provide, for example. So acrylic is one way to where you can come on site with a little USB based router. It's probably just a 1x1 broadcasting a signal. But what you can do is you can stand in an empty open space, maybe 7 or 8 feet apart, and have someone hold the router, and then use acrylic to measure what the RSSI of that signal is coming from off that little broadcasting access point, and then take that same signal or that same little access point that's USB powered, and have someone stand on the other side of a wall while you go into a room, close the door, and see what the signal looks like, and,
Mm.
and jot that down, and pretty easily measure what the attenuation looks
Yeah.
like going through a particular piece of furniture or obstacle,
Yeah.
and use that to help better calculate a more accurate predictive design, so that you might not customer might not want to pay for professional services to do an on-site survey or an active site survey. Maybe a predictive site survey is all you can really work with. And if that's the case, there are definitely ways to go up and make that very accurate. And so we've used acrylic before in my past life as an SC, just to get better on-site measurements for predictive analysis. And then beyond that, everyone's probably going to say this, but Wireshark is fantastic, right? And being able to, especially run monitor mode captures and see very easily 802.11 frames, and get into the weeds in terms of how frames are traversing the environment, at what rates, at what data rates, and just being able to, and that's probably one of the quickest ways to get very familiar with 802.11 and Wi-Fi operations. If someone's, still learning and looking to get up to speed, crack open Wireshark, take a monitor mode capture on your home network, and just look at, what a data flow looks like as you stream a YouTube video, for example, and look at the block ACKs and the different data frames or the QoS data frames, and see how that all kind of interoperates. See that your device, while you're streaming a video, is actually going to sleep frequently, and why that might be, and start going down those different avenues of investigation. And it's an easy way to kill a weekend, but it's really fun, exciting material to really see how everything operates at a very low level, and really get a solid understanding of Wi-Fi operations in general.
Well, that is really cool, Devin. Obviously, you're passionate about Wi-Fi and going deep. If anyone wants to connect with you or follow what you're up to, how would you recommend they do that?
Probably the best way would be LinkedIn. I'm trying to be more and more active on LinkedIn. I'm one of the few that's actually not on Twitter. I've thought about it time and time again. There's nothing really
this is hypocrisy here.
I've definitely given.
I guess this will never air.
Yeah, I know. You're probably gonna want to cut this out, right? No. LinkedIn's probably the best way for me. I do like LinkedIn and the way you can take a more professional approach to social media and connecting with peers. And absolutely, yeah, LinkedIn for sure. And the other way is, just reach out to me. I'm always happy to communicate with anyone. I think my contact information is in my LinkedIn profile. So always happy to chat at any time about anything, really.
Thank you, Devin. All right. Well, thanks for stopping by and sharing with us. We really appreciate it, and have a good rest of your week.
Great. Thanks for having me, Matthew. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Wireless LAN Pros for all the latest news and updates, and also connect directly with Keith on Twitter at Keith R. Parsons. Head over to www.wlanpros.com for this episode's show notes, as well as the latest in all things Wi-Fi.